Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Southern Fried Podcast, a production of the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. I'm Rex Nelson, senior editor of the Democrat Gazette, and we're going to talk health care in Arkansas today. Obviously, a huge topic at all times in our state, and we have one of the most progressive, high-profile healthcare leaders in our state with us today, Adam Head, who is the CEO of CARTI. Adam, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate being here, Rex.
Really appreciate you coming on. Boy, there has been a lot, I know, happening not only on the overall healthcare front, but what you guys are doing with your locations all over the state of Arkansas. I want to go back, though, to when you arrived at CARTI in the fall of 2017. This is an important institution to our state, and yet they had lost money the previous 4 fiscal years. You found a pretty challenging situation, did you not, when you arrived?
Yes. The board was pretty honest with me. The previous CEO had been there for 26 years and had done a great job. She had planned to retire, and there was a little bit of a gap there for several months. But our community-based board was really honest with me. They knew that it was going to be a challenging role, and I've always tried to pursue challenging leadership roles and probably cut my teeth on some of that just being in the Army years ago.
Yeah. And I wanted to talk about that a little later.
Yeah, sure. But anyway, they told me that it was going to be tough. I knew the financial state things were in. I mean, it's always never.
You went in with your eyes wide open.
They were open, and you still learn things.
Yeah.
But it was certainly a challenging time.
Yeah, absolutely. Now the board did a national search, and yet they stayed right here in Arkansas. And you were in your 30s, very, very young. What do you think you brought? And don't be humble with me. Be honest. What do you think you brought that really impressed the board? A board that's doing a national search that said, "This guy's only in his 30s, but he's the one we want to choose."
I was really honest with the board. I had a moment. It was a 6-month interview process, and I was just down the road at Arkansas Heart Hospital,
right.
and from here, and so I'm passionate about the state, but really didn't know a lot of specifics about the situation CARTI was in, and really didn't know as much about CARTI as what I wanted to know, and didn't know as many of the people that work there. Every moment I got to spend with the team during the interview process, I appreciated the mission more and became more passionate about it, and got to a point where I felt like this is where I'm supposed to be. And my wife was telling me that. She said, this job seems like you. But I didn't have any cancer experience. And I was pretty honest with the board.
Coming from a heart hospital.
And they knew that. But I felt like I had a good handle on just understanding a lot of the ins and outs of healthcare, and more than that, what I tried to lean on was just leadership.
Yeah.
I talked about being in leadership roles in very turbulent times, turbulent situations, and that's really what I spoke to. And I had a moment where I stood up and I thought to myself, Adam, I'm just gonna lay it out here. And if they say, you're not the kind of person we feel like we need at this time, and there's nothing that I would have regretted in that moment. I've laid it all out.
Yeah. Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. But you were successful. In the first 2 years, your net revenue increased by 31%. Big picture. What did you do those first 2 years to turn things around so quickly?
CARTI had been in a situation where, built this amazing cancer center right in the heart of Little Rock.
Right.
The vision really at that time was, hey, we've got all these other clinics around the state. They were mostly a single specialty type, either medical oncology, which is like the primary care of cancer treatment, or radiation oncology. But the main, large CARTI Cancer Center here in Little Rock, and at that time we only had the one.
Right.
That was supposed to be the hub. That was the vision of what was to be. And unfortunately, through the build-out process and the costs and the bond issuance and associated with certain financial targets, they weren't being met, and it really, I think, through that amplified some cultural division that maybe was already a challenge. There had been several acquisitions of groups bringing on new doctors, new team members. It went from just being radiation oncology since 1976, and then in 2011 and 12, you have medical oncologists. You've still got your radiation oncologist, you've got radiologists, you've got a surgeon. Mm-hmm. And the way I chose to lean in from the very beginning is we've got to look at the culture first as a foundation. That's going to allow us to create a strong operating environment, and that in turn is going to lead to strong financial results. The only trick with that was there was a very short time to be able to do some of those things.
And to move quickly, yeah.
It was about 9 months, but it was really neat. I mean, it is a neat story now. It wasn't always fun, then, but it was cool to be able to see everybody come together and say, we believe in this thing. We can do something that's going to ultimately transform the way cancer care is delivered. We didn't really know at that time in 2017 just how much it could be transformed and some of the cool things we'll be able to do over the next several years. But that was the approach I took. It had to start with culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you grew up here in Arkansas in North Little Rock. I went back in preparation for our show and reread your high profile from a couple of years ago, but sounds like you had a good childhood and what I would consider a pretty average Arkansas childhood growing up.
It was a great childhood. I'd say I grew up on Lake Number 3 or close by in Lakewood.
Right where it is.
Played baseball in the Lakewood ball fields, and I from here, roots here. Been here since my grandfather came back from World War II and had car businesses here, and saw that through my dad, and he was in that for a time, and he's been here, my mom, for a long time. So yeah, been here, got to go to University of Arkansas and stay here, and then 9/11 happened toward the end of that time, and so and that kind of changed everything. I was
going to ask, you went to the University of Arkansas, as so many Arkansans do. How did you get an Army ROTC? What drove that decision?
The short version is I thought I wanted to be in the FBI. I had talked to a local FBI agent. I thought, this is what I need to do. I've always leaned into, I guess, a sense of justice, and I was thinking maybe I can serve in this way, and I like to always be active and try to stay in good shape, and I thought that could be a good role. As I got into school, I ended up working in a hospital. I worked at Washington Regional Hospital, and they built their new campus in the early 2000s, and that all kind of changed for me, and then I kind of changed the trajectory, of my career. But that was the reason I wanted to get into the Army. I had somebody tell me, you can either be an attorney, you can go into computer science, or you can go through the Army. I'll choose this one. And, I ended up being a medical service corps officer, not a military intelligence officer. And that provided a lot of the foundation for what I do now.
And you touched on the fact that September 11th changed your life, changed your trajectory in many ways. Talk about that.
I was a junior in college when it happened, and like a lot of students, I was just leaving the dorm and walking to class, and everybody remembers where they were. But for me, when I joined Army ROTC, there's always something going on in the world, right? But it was relatively peaceful as far as our involvement as a nation, and more than anything, I guess, on my own journey, I was thinking to myself, this is going to be pretty serious. This is not just going in and either serving a few years that I owe back to the Army, for the education, or staying in, long term. This is going to look very different from what I initially planned on. And it was.
Yeah, I was going to say you deployed to Iraq in 2005.
I did. I was a medical service corps officer, which you're kind of a dual role. I planned the medical operations for my battalion and also was a medical platoon leader. So I had a platoon of medics that we used, and it was pretty transformative for me because I was, 23 to 25 years old when I had that role. Yeah. And so I was thrust into that and a lot of responsibility and had a lot of hard lessons learned and saw a lot of things. There were a lot of hard moments. There were a lot of moments that I'll always remember where I saw some great things and really defined my leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you finish active duty. What were you looking at doing at that point? How did you end up back in Arkansas?
I ended up, when I was a captain, and this was in 2008, when I was getting ready to finish, I was working at the main hospital in Fort Benning. And my wife and I, really, the commitment was up, and we were just looking at everything. Should we get out? Should we continue on? Healthcare leadership in the Army. And ended up going for an interview at Arkansas Heart Hospital in 2008, and ended up getting a job as an assistant administrator. And so I finished up time in the Army and at Fort Benning, Georgia in 2008 and got that first job as a hospital assistant administrator there and really cut my teeth on a lot of that.
That's where you really learn the administration side of things.
I did. It was a great experience. I got to look at a lot of different areas, a lot of different departments, see it all. And that was a really helpful time for me before I took on my first, top leadership role in a healthcare organization.
Yeah. We will talk about CARTI's statewide presence now, but I want to start here because you come back home to Central Arkansas, and you were talking about the facility that CARTI had built here in Little Rock, and we're taping this downtown. I work downtown. I live out in West Little Rock, and as I go west down 630, which is really, you look on both sides of it, turned into some tremendous healthcare corridor. I recently did a perspective cover story on the new orthopedic and spine hospital at UAMS, their new proton therapy for cancer at the same time. But you look at the institutions up and down either side of 630, and I realize this is a place that has always served an entire state, a large geographic area, and parts of surrounding states. But boy, when it comes to healthcare, Little Rock really bats above its weight class, I would have to think, for a city of 200,000 people. It's a huge part of the economy here, is it not?
Oh, it certainly is. It's nice that Little Rock is essentially in the center of the state, and so that's been a nice thing to be able to grow. And we've got 37 acres ourselves, which is
I did not realize you had that size
a blessing.
Footprint. Yeah,
right there in the middle of 630, close to that intersection of 630 and 430. So we've continued to try to use that opportunity as where applicable, and there's a great population to serve out there. We've got all this. We've got a lot of these resources as a state, and we also have a lot of challenges from a healthcare standpoint with the roughly 3 million people who live here.
We do have a lot of challenges as a state, and that's why I wanted to expand it out to your statewide effort. I spent 4 years at the Delta Regional Authority working on Delta issues in parts of 8 states. I'm a native of South Arkansas, so I probably write a lot more than most people do about East Arkansas, about South Arkansas. And I was struck last week. First, I see a story in the Pine Bluff commercial on a speech you gave there in Pine Bluff, and I see that fabulous facility as I drive through there. And then Saturday, I'm in El Dorado speaking to the South Arkansas Literary Festival and drive by your beautiful facility on West Avenue there in El Dorado. But talk a little bit about how under your leadership that CARTI has really reached out, and rather than making everybody come to Little Rock, has truly become a statewide institution.
I appreciate that. It's always nice when somebody says, I saw your facility there. It's encouraging to us. Going back to 2017-18, once we got healthy, financially and, reestablish our cultural identity and what we needed to be.
And I'll interrupt you in a second. I think most people know, but the CA in CARTI is Central Arkansas Radiation Therapy Institute originally, but you're far past Central Arkansas.
Yeah, and more expansive than just radiation. So truthfully, in 2011 and 12, the radiation alone part of that was dropped. It's no longer an acronym. We've reestablished that as our value. So it's a really interesting word. It's all caps, no periods.
That's right.
Not an acronym anymore. We realized when we thought about the concept of, okay, what's a cancer center? Well, a cancer center to us was where you could have more than one specialty in a singular location. Patients essentially can go to one front desk, have providers working together, teams work together, wraparound services that are desired in a cancer journey, and it's available. And we thought about how we were set up with this one large cancer center, 4 stories, 175,000 square feet, that is truly incredible. Mm-hmm. We just felt like we could do more. There are a lot of patients in this state that don't even want to have to make the drive to Little Rock, even though, like you mentioned, we've got fantastic resources right here. So a natural one was that started in Conway, and we were able to do a relatively small remodel, and it just exploded. This one front desk concept, patients wanted to be able to stay there. We did it again in Russellville in 2019. We built one in 2020 in North Little Rock, which is the first one that was truly a ground up, smaller version of what we have in Little Rock. Mm-hmm. And then once we started thinking about next steps, we kept going to South Arkansas. And we did kind of a listening session. It was a listening session, and it happened to be in El Dorado. We were at a restaurant, and it's 4 or 5 years ago. And we had a bunch of providers in the room and just different people in healthcare and the community. And we just asked them a question, what if we were to have a cancer center here? We're really looking at South Arkansas. And somebody raised their hand and they said, for a long time, we've felt like there's a mentality that Little Rock is the northern border of the state.
Yeah.
And that really felt, everybody's nodding their heads in the room. And we were thinking to ourselves, this is a common theme. This is how a lot of people feel.
They're not seen or heard by those of us here in Little Rock. Yeah.
And I was talking to a mentor, and we were thinking about the decisions of where do we go, when. We felt like we were building on this momentum, and patients were responding to it. And I heard somebody tell me, said, well, where does the mission lead you? Mm-hmm. And we felt like the mission was going to lead us to areas where cancer care specifically, had been historically either not present at all. Hey, you got to drive to Little Rock if you need something, or it had been fragmented or was fragmented. And that's why we leaned in hard and looking at, let's establish something, not just clinics, which we had some clinics in El Dorado and Stuttgart, some other areas, but let's create something that is so robust, so strong in the look, the feel.
Standalone cancer center.
That unless you have to have a surgery, which, I know we're going to talk about that, your care can stay here. You can feel good. You can trust it. Mm-hmm. And that was the missional moment for us.
Yeah. I write a lot about the changing demographics of Arkansas because it really fascinates me. I mean, between 2000 and 2010, between 2010 and 2020 census, we gained population as a state, but 53 of the 75 counties lost population. All that growth came from just 22, less than a third of our counties. So you have large areas of rural Arkansas losing population. As they lose population, obviously they're going to lose primary care physicians. They're going to lose other services, not just in cancer treatment, but the whole healthcare sector in Arkansas, that hollowing out of rural areas and those remaining behind, being in such sparsely populated areas, that has to create some true challenges for anybody involved in healthcare statewide in Arkansas, I would think.
Absolutely. Cancer for our world, I mean, and again, there's all sorts of other diseases that are a challenge for this state. But in our world, for cancer care, we know that overall 1 in 3 people will get a cancer diagnosis in their lifetime. In Arkansas, the American Cancer Society projects that now we're getting close to 19,000 newly diagnosed cancer cases projected in 2023. And people may say, well, okay, what is that number? Why does that matter? If you look at a kind of a heat map of the state, in South Arkansas specifically, if you're looking by county, a lot of those counties just light up. Because we really believe if it's not just access, people always talk about access in healthcare, but when it comes to cancer, people be willing to drain their bank account. One, hey, we got to go out of state, we've got to go somewhere. I heard about this or I read about this, or you just don't get care at all. You say, well, I can't go. I can't afford it. I can't get there. I'll do that scan later on. And we really believed if we could go to some of those areas, we can really diagnose more cancer, meaning the number overall goes up. Maybe it crests 20,000 or 25,000 because we're diagnosing more patients. We know they're out there. They're just now being diagnosed as a stage 3 or a stage 4, potentially not maybe a 1 or 2, where we can really do more to treat someone typically. And what's been really cool we've seen the last few years, and I'm not saying it's just through our efforts, but this is happening in our state, where the mortality number, people that, cancer is their final diagnosis, that number's staying the same, even though the overall diagnosed cases is going up. And that's interesting. That's our heartbeat as an institution.
Exactly. We'll be back with more of the Southern Fried Podcast, but first, this break. Hi, Rex Nelson here. Thanks for listening so far. A lot of the topics we cover here on the Southern Fried Podcast and many more can be found on the pages of the Democrat Gazette. If you'd like to support this great newspaper's commitment to bringing you the latest in Arkansas news, sports, and entertainment, consider subscribing to the Democrat Gazette today. With your subscription, you'll get a digital edition of the newspaper every morning, along with the latest news and updates delivered to you on an iPad provided at no extra cost. You'll also get the same award-winning journalism you've come to expect from the Democrat Gazette, including my 3 weekly columns, plus exclusive photo galleries, videos, articles, and digital extras, all in the palm of your hand. As a bonus, we're offering a limited-time deal to our podcast listeners. To take advantage of this exclusive offer, click the link in the description or go to arkansasonline.com/podcast23. Welcome back to the Southern Fried Podcast, a production of the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. You touched on it and said we were going to, and I do want to talk about the surgery center. Why a surgery center? What was behind that decision?
We've evolved a lot over the last 47 years, again, starting in 1976. And certainly over the last 10 or 12 years, there's been a lot of evolution. It felt like a natural next step for us. We have had surgeons on our team for a long time, and that's continued to grow. Certainly with a lot of patients in their cancer journey, it can start with a surgery. Okay, we found this. Now you need to get some general treatment. You need to see a medical oncologist. You need to go get scans, radiation, etc. But we always our surgeons always had to do those surgeries off-site. We knew in the same way we've created cancer centers that we want to feel like a different kind of experience, a non-institutional experience, a very trusted experience. If we were going to get into surgery and actually being able to perform that in one of our own locations, it needed to look and feel unique. It needed to carry that same weight of trust, even in the building itself, the design, everything. So we took a field trip. It was actually the very beginning of 2020 as COVID was hitting.
Right as it was hitting.
We took a field trip to Memorial Sloan Kettering, which is always, with MD Anderson, was always rated as one of the top 1 or 2 cancer institutions in the world.
Yeah.
And we scheduled a tour. We were able to get into, and this is in Lower Manhattan, It's an extended stay surgery center that works with the rest of their campus. It's not a hospital. Mm-hmm. It's actually designated as a surgery center, but it was doing more complex surgeries than are ever typically done in a surgery center, and had the ability to keep patients overnight. Now, this is in New York.
Right.
And so it was vertical, it was straight up like 14 stories. I thought, well, what's an Arkansas version of that? Mm-hmm. What does this need to look like? And we came back, and as we started looking at designs and looked at our team and the types of specialties we wanted to be able to offer, we came up with this, working with some fantastic partners, of course, we're able to come up with this concept and design, and it's been really exciting to see that come to fruition.
How does it change the patient experience for you to have that as part of your campus now, part of your organization?
Well, we call that continuity of care. Mm-hmm. We can now have one of our surgeons can perform a surgery, and take one of our breast surgeons. They can perform a surgery in the surgery center, which can do practically all of cancer-focused breast surgeries that need to occur. And if there's follow-on treatment with a medical oncologist, where someone finishes up, and now because we've got this this kind of network, this infrastructure around the state. Well, hey, I'm from El Dorado, I'm from Crossett. Well,
right.
Good news, you can get all your follow-on care
there
where you live. Here. This is typically a one-time event, and so we're excited about this being a powerful moment for a lot of our patients and wherever they live.
And obviously, with the newer facility, you have all of the bleeding edge technology, Da Vinci robots, so forth.
We do. It's pretty neat to see when we've given some tours, see people's reaction to walking through. We have 6 ORs. 2 of those have Da Vinci robots. Mm-hmm. Having something of that scale and technology is pretty atypical in a surgery center.
Yeah.
The facility itself is 57,000 square feet.
Wow.
It's classified as a mega surgery center in its scale, and it's the first one like that in the state, and it's the first cancer-focused surgery center in the state. It's the first surgery center in the state to be able to offer overnight rooms if necessary, which gives us more ability to do surgeries that would typically always have to be done on a hospital campus.
Right.
So interventional radiology suite, we can do some urologic procedures. We're going to gynecologic surgical oncologists are going to be doing some complex procedures there, head and neck cancer, others. There's a lot that can be done in this space, just depending on what a patient needs.
Yeah. You talked about how the mission of CARTI has evolved, and especially over the last decade, just has completely changed. Look forward, if you will, and I know it's hard to predict because things change. We couldn't have seen a pandemic coming in 2020, for instance. Mm-hmm. Things change a lot. But from where you sit now, give me a sense of where you see the institution 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
Everything goes back to the mission, first of all. Our mission is making trusted cancer care accessible. That's the short version. Technology continues to change. It's changed since I came on board.
Exactly.
Immunotherapy, has come online really strong in the last several years, and that's a way we can treat patients who are getting infusions like we never could before. Radiation oncology, we've been able to offer more than ever before with CyberKnife and shorter course treatments, meaning now patients that we treat can go in for 5 treatments or even 1 treatment instead of 50 or 60. And surgery is, certainly part of this, some of the imaging that we can do. We believe as an institution, again, we're an independent, nonprofit, non-physician owned, non-outside managed entity, that it's our core responsibility to find ways to treat patients with this technology, with this expertise, and make it as inexpensive for a patient as possible. That's not always talked about. The way we're actually providing care, we believe is the future. It's less expensive for insurance companies, for Medicare. It's less expensive for patients and families, and it's more accessible than ever before. And if we can accomplish all of those things, I feel like we can really make a difference. There's going to be new treatments that are going to come online. People are talking about artificial intelligence and healthcare, precision medicine. We have a lot of genetics and risk management now, where if there's a cancer diagnosed in a family, the rest of the family can come in and, hey, you need to start doing this proactive screening. Mm-hmm. So we're doing a lot of those things now. But as much as possible, if it's cancer or if it touches cancer, that's where we want to be. That's our space. That's where we feel like we can make a difference. And I feel like there's more that we can continue to offer. And, we're going to continue to reinvest in that.
Yeah. Any additional, and I know this is not something that's been thought out probably yet, but do you see additional Arkansas cities having cancer centers going forward?
Possibly. We do. I'm not probably prepared to release that today, yeah. But we know that there's more need there. Mm-hmm. But truly, it has to start with where do we feel like we can truly make an impact. That we have a great state with a lot of fantastic providers of different institutions. We don't in any way deny that. We've had a philosophy that let's start with what can benefit patients and families, where we can make an impact, and let's just let the chips fall after that. And that's what our entire team believes, and that's kind of our rallying cry. So we don't think we're finished expanding services in depth and breadth, research, and all the research studies that we have going on, and getting patients on new trials. So there is so much more work to be done. We're letting that lead us,
Gotcha.
Letting that guide us. Yeah.
Gotcha. Adam, thank you. I knew it would go fast because it's been a fascinating discussion, and thank you for what CARTI is doing now statewide in our state of Arkansas right now.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Rex.
Our guest, Adam Head, CEO of CARTI, thank you for joining us for another edition of the Southern Fried Podcast, a production of the Arkansas Democrat Gazette.